I did say I would talk a little bit about where this whole MRSGS business came from. And, well, this is the program starting out here. Very basic, written by my brother back in high school upon my request to figure out a way to listen to the Fibonacci sequence. Because, you know, with all of the cool properties and patterns I had already learned about, and being into making music and all, still am, by the way, but at any rate, I wanted to hear the Fibonacci sequence, you know, use some sort of basic system to listen to what the Fibonacci sequence would sound like, you know. So that's what my brother did for me. Let's go ahead and just, it says enter the file name to write to, so it actually will print out the, you know, remainders and such, the sequences. We'll just call it Y for why not. And now here we can see we have Fibonacci sequence as our first menu item. And the second option, we could do a Fibonacci-like sequence where, you know, again, we could start with 1 and 4 instead of 1 and 1 or what have you. And then the third option here is just multiples, basically. So some constant a times n, so like 3n, 7n, whatever, where n are the, you know, integers. And so non-negative integers, but technically speaking. But anyways, we got the prime sequence as well as an option, because you gotta look at the primes, right? So at any rate, so let's go ahead and look at the option 1. Now I calculated the Fibonacci sequence up to a sufficient amount of terms. And now we have, would you like to simply enter the length of the scale? We're going to do that because we're not going to bother you with all the intricacies of the program. It's not that deep, but we don't need to get into any of the nitty-gritty per se. So would you like to enter it? Yes, let's just do that. So this is the modulus, right? So this is mod 13, mod 14, mod whatever. Well, in fact, let's do 13. Okay, and so we have, yeah, the Fibonacci sequence, mod 13, and it's got 15 columns, and it just does that by default. And we have, you know, the sequence 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Those of you who are in the know a bit about representing the Fibonacci sequence over a modulus, you would expect to see a 0 here to begin with. Back in high school, though, I actually hadn't heard of modular arithmetic. I kind of just figured, well, if I want to listen to it repeat something, it can't just keep going off to infinity, right? Because the Fibonacci sequence just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It'll be right off the piano keyboard very soon. So I said, well, why don't we have it go around in a circle? All right. So, you know, kind of rediscovered the wheel. It's very fun to do, by the way. I highly recommend rediscovering wheels. At any rate, so yeah, but I didn't quite do the 0 beginning here. So we have 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, Fibonacci sequence. But now, once we exceed our modulus of 13, we'll notice in our 8th term here, we'll notice we're back down to 8. Why so? Because, well, 8 plus 13 is 21, right? But 21 mod 13 gives us a remainder of 8, right? And well, so on down the line. So 8 plus 13, you take that, and you get, you know, so on. And so at any rate, we get this finite repeating sequence, which is a neat thing to figure out. I hadn't heard of Pisano periods either, so I was blown away. Like, whoa, this is repeating the same sequence over and over again when I just have it go around in a circle like that. And so, you know, so I was pretty blown away by this, and so I wanted to listen to it. So my brother made this for me. At any rate, so we get, you know, cause now I do some programming for my research, but I'm not a programmer. He is a programmer at this point, but yeah, anyways, at the time I did no programming, 0 programming. So I did all of this by hand, and so it was really helpful. At any rate, so what's the length of this period? Well, we have 15, and then it repeats after 15 plus 13, so 28 terms, and it repeats. So notice it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, so on again. So the same sequence over and over and over again, the Pisano period, again modified by this little bit. Okay, so well, what you will notice is it says 13 here. That should be a 0, right, in the usual modular arithmetic. But I didn't know that in high school. I didn't know modular arithmetic was a thing. So anyways, so we get this is 15 and 13 is 28. And so that's the length of our period. right? Pattern length, as I called it then. And now the duration, we're not going to change that. You can make it faster or slower when it plays. We'll just do that. And we're not going to change the max or min frequencies. So we'll just do no. Okay. Now this is just a linear graph. Let's have the lines stay. You can have them disappear as they go through. This is just an XY coordinate plane graph. So you'd see this repeating over and over again as it trails off this way on the XY system. Yeah. And yet we also have, of course, a circular graph where we have that same Fibonacci sequence over a modulus of 13, only it's shown in this remainders around the circle representation. So 0 at the top, or what I called 13 at the time, and then 1, and then 2 as a remainder, 3 as a remainder, so on, all the way up to 12, right? And then back to 0. And if you represent it that way, well, this is what you get. You see the Fibonacci sequence traveling around, and I'm connecting one term to the next term, consecutive terms, via a segment. And that's how we get this beautiful graph. Notice its symmetry. And again, I was blown away in high school. Just absolutely in love with this whole Fibonacci sequence. And what I didn't know was called modular arithmetic, and the Pisano periods. What I didn't know were called Pisano periods. And these beautiful, graphs. Now we can actually also listen to them. So let's go ahead and just give you a little bit of a sense of what that might sound like. So yeah, needless to say, I've created a few tunes based on that. Maybe I'll link one or two in the description of this video. At any rate, so this is the Fibonacci Sequence Mod 13, and so we'll go ahead and escape that. Interesting part of the program, while we're on it, I won't spend too much time on this, but you can take that period that it repeats over and over again in the first iteration and use that to generate yet another sequence by treating that first iteration as your base sequence and modulating through those terms. Modulating in quotes here to, if you will, type that. So at any rate, if you do so, you'll end up with this, in this case, is a 1, 1, 1, 2, 5, 8, 12, 13, and so we can find where does that repeat, and this is, of course, sort of manual effort here. We got 1, no, it goes to 13, so, there we are, 1, 1, 1, 2, 5, and you can check that, but it does indeed repeat after that. I did this a few times, let's just say. We got 1, 2, 3 groups of 15, so 45, plus 3 more, so 48 is the length this time. Did I do that right? That looks good. And we won't change the duration, and we won't change the max or min, so that's fine. And then there we go. And again, just a circular to begin with, the circular representation. Yeah, and notice we've lost some of the segments here, but it looks as though this is correct. Yeah, it's been a while since I've used this program, but it does seem we have that vertical symmetry still here, which is wonderful, and yet another glorious shape. And while we're here, I might as well let you listen to that. So yeah, there you go. Just a bit of a peek into this wonderful world of this program here. So yeah, and you can keep iterating this, and it's interesting to see if they end up repeating the same sequence at some point as you iterate it further, or if it alternates between a couple, that sort of thing. So it's an interesting topic unto itself, I think, anyway. And certainly musically useful, because, again, I was using this for musical purposes. And so you get this sort of, how do you say, sort of variation upon a theme. Yeah. So, at any rate, there we go for the Fibonacci sequence. Let's go ahead and take a look at another sort of thing. Well, option 2, Fibonacci-like sequence. So let's just do that. Oops, I didn't do that right. Okay, so yeah, so we're going to enter different seeds. Let's just do 1 and let's do 4. I hope I didn't mess it up. Let's go. Would you like to enter the yes? Let's do that. And let's do, okay, let's just do 13 again. For good luck. And now this is the Fibonacci-like sequence, starting with the terms 1 and 4. So we have 1 plus 4 is 5, 5 plus 4 is 9, 9 plus 5 is 14, but mod 13. So we end up with a remainder of 1. Right, and so turns out you can actually add these terms without having to do all the Fibonacci sequence initially. And we can just use the residues here. So we get 1 and 9 is 10, and then so on 11, and then once it exceeds 13, you have to take the remainder again. At any rate, we get 1, 4, 5, 9, and let's see where that repeats. So we get 1, 4, 5, 9 right there. Okay, so it's 15 plus 13 more terms. So again, 28, if you recall from the previous one we did. It was also 28. Anyway, so we get, just do that, and we won't change that. Now the linear graph looks basically like this. Linear in the sense of a Cartesian coordinate, sort of usual XY type graph. Intriguing. Now in the circular representation, now again, remember we have 13 or 0, right, as it would be represented at the tip here, or as I did anyway, and I went clockwise. Nowadays I might start here and go counterclockwise, right? But I wasn't familiar with that at the time. At any rate, so we have 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 12 and back to 0 again. And we get this, despite the possible graphs we could have in here, all kinds of complicated things, you know, we actually end up with a simple square, or diamond if you want, with the diagonals. And that's it. And it repeats that over and over again. Pretty cool stuff. I mean, if you want to listen to that, why not? At any rate, so that's the idea there. And yeah, so, and you can continue to, you know, go through a second, third iteration and so on. But let's go ahead and escape that. Okay, so moving along, let's just do the same. I'm not going to be looking at a data sheet after this or anything at this point. But we got a third option. Let's do multiples. So a times n. Okay, let's enter our multiple value. Let's just do 7. Would you like to enter the length of the scale? Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do 13 again. All right, so now we have 13, 7, 1, 8, 2, 9, 3, 10, 4, 11, 5, 12, 6, and then it repeats. 13, 7, 1, 8, 2, and so on. So notice actually it's a length of 13. And we have exactly all of the 13 possible residues. So, except it's in a different order, right? Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so all the way to 13, it's 13, 7, 1, 8. And so it's been reordered. It's what we call a permutation in mathematics. Never mind the technical details of that. It's basically just reordering things. And so we have 13 length for our pattern this time. And we won't change the duration, nor will we change that. And so let's do this. Cool, and that's in the Cartesian coordinate system. And now let's switch out the representation to our sort of circular graph variety. Again, 0 and all the way up to 12 and then back to 0 again. Sort of a clock with 13 possible values. Yeah, and it gives us this wonderful 13 star, if you want. And what is that? Let's just hear that for a second. So yeah, nothing too remarkable there, but still nonetheless musically useful. And so it's kind of neat. Right, so there's that. And if you keep going through here, you'll notice that it actually keeps going through permutations of that same possible 13, residues. At any rate, we won't do that. So let's go into the program again. Just one last option here. We have the prime sequence. So let's do that. Always a fascinating sequence. Would you like to simply enter the length of the scale? Now notice in this case, as far as modular arithmetic and primes go, we don't have the convenience of a finite representation or a periodic residue sequence coming out of the combination of the two. So in this case, I'm just going to enter in arbitrary, why not just 13 again? Let's do, yes, 13. And if you look through this, you will find that it doesn't quite repeat the same thing over again. And so I'm just going to type in a sort of arbitrary length for it to show us. And so yeah, sort of a truncation of what it would actually be doing. And then we have enter duration, so I'm just going to do that. And we're not going to bother with that. And then and there we go. So this is a linear representation. You can see it just kind of going all over the place. Rather interesting nonetheless. The structure within which is not entirely apparent, shall we just say. Yes. And then the representation is a circular representation. Again, connecting consecutive terms of whatever the sequence is. Yeah. And if you look closely enough, you'll find that it's not quite a symmetric graph. It almost looks like it in this case, but it's not quite if you look carefully enough. At any rate, yeah, so fun stuff. And I'll spare you the listening to this if you'd like. Let me know. I can maybe share that at some point. At any rate, so that's the program that my brother made for me in high school. I ended up using this, fun fact, for my Bachelor of Arts thesis in the mathematics of music later in college, just as a part of it, of course. It was more to my major than that. But yeah, it was that cool, so I was actually able to use it later in life as well. All right, so that's the program that I was attempting to just recreate using some turtle graphics and Squeak programming language based on in Smalltalk. Never mind the details on that, but it's basically using turtle graphics. And then in the process of doing so, I happened into this sort of MRSGS sort of stuff. And yeah, so modular residue sequence graphing systems, which completely, again, blew me away and completely usurped my initial primary goal of recreating this program. And instead, I went ahead and explored MRSGSs and various sequences within them more as my primary objective.